Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show, member of the Pod Bros Podcast Network. Don't forget to go to podbros.com and find yourself another podcast you want to listen to. And don't forget to check out our sponsors, Trap and Roll Soap Company. Use promo code BeefSquatch to get some money off your purchase. Get some soap. Check out their brand new Scrub Kami for Mommy shirt. It's pretty funny. I'm excited for mine to come in the mail so I can wear it all the time. And check out our other sponsors, Rolls Gear, as well as T-Bomber. I'm Rob, and me and Randy had kind of a rough night. Not so much just bad training, but man, it was just a long day for both of us. So we got to sit down with our favorite adult beverages and talk about what it's like being a big person in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how that works out in self-defense. So I really enjoyed the episode, and I hope you guys did, or I hope you guys do too, because you're about to listen to it. So, like I said, go to bjjshow.com, check out some of our old episodes, and don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, and rate and review us on iTunes. No, man, I'm actually right there with you, because I'm really trying to steer clear of beer, because it's even what is it? Even like the Michelob Ultra, which is supposed to be the best beer you can drink if you're trying not to be a giant chungus, which Lord knows I need to work on myself, but if you have that, it's supposed to be not that bad. But still, I blame Germany. I blame all my German friends. It's still taking I'll drink 12, and I'm like, oh, that's not bad. But if you look at it, it's 1,200 calories. Whereas now I have to move on to something a little lighter, like we're talking about bourbon or vodka or something along those lines. But dude, that's a different monster, honestly.
Well, there's just something about bourbon. I mean, I love it, and it's delicious, but it definitely, if I really get into it, it kind of turns me into a little bit of a drama queen. So, if I'm sipping on bourbon, you can pretty much bet that I'm by myself.
Oh no! Oh no, baby, what is you doing? No, but dude, you're with me on the air, so technically you're not alone, so it's not too bad, right?
But I don't have that much in here, so it shouldn't be a drama queen episode.
Oh, that's
depending
good.
on what we're talking about.
Oh, that's good. That's real good. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. I'm Rob.
I'm Randy. Sorry, I'm taking a sip of bourbon.
No, it's all good, man. Yeah, so we're back at it. 3 weeks in a row, man. We're actually getting pretty good at this right now.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do with myself now. I'm like, dude, we've done 3 episodes in a row. We've been pretty consistent. Now, granted, we're recording this on a Monday, so this should be a Tuesday episode you guys get. So we apologize that it didn't get dropped on Friday or Saturday. So, hey, what are you going to do, honestly?
Yeah, that's how life goes. We're still here. We're still doing it.
Still doing it, man. Got any training in?
A ton. It's rough trying to balance all these moving pieces, and that's been kind of my struggle for the past few months. And now you add a girlfriend to the mix, and that obviously is demanding as well.
Oh, fuck.
But hey, I got to train a bunch. I trained today a lot, jiu-jitsu and kickboxing after a long day. Even got my lifts in, back on the grind, man. How about you?
So it's still kind of difficult to get some classes in while I am training up for this new job, but I did pull up. So I have to blame, I think, Cobra Kai for this one. I actually ran through all my old Taekwondo forms, and I know it's terrible, but I was like, ew, I feel dirty. So I actually pulled the mats out and did a whole bunch of mobility drills and do a little bit of gymnastica natural, and then I actually took my bike out and ran around the neighborhood on my bike, which is super duper rare for me. And I can tell because I had this 8-year-old girl on a tricycle just blow by me on an uphill. I was like, fuck, dude, come on. But
did you give her the Debo treatment?
I thought about it, man, but then I'm trying to be a good neighbor. This isn't this. It used to be I'd move in 2 or 3 years, so it wouldn't be a big deal. I can somebody's acting like an asshole, I'd be, hey, you know what? Fuck you, man. what was it? The other day, I was trying to make a right out of our neighborhood, and I had this lady yell at me, tell me I was going to cause a wreck because I was trying to pull up safely to make a right on red, which is an amazing thing that I missed about the United States. And she flicked me off, said, "Fuck you, you're going to cause a wreck." You know, I was like, the fuck, man? Well, naturally, my natural reaction was, yeah, well, fuck you too, man. And I was like, shit, I live in this neighborhood. I can't be doing that, you know, like, but because my mind goes back to, like, you know, you move every 2 or 3 years, so you can get away with that, but.
Yeah, you can piss off your neighbors and roll out.
Nah, true. But it's also kind of a big neighborhood, so I'm like, you know, hey, do you know who the fuck I am? No? All right, well, fuck it. And just drive off. It should be okay. But I did roll around the neighborhood on my bike. That was a painful experience. I came back in and just kind of walked in the side door, tried to go upstairs. That didn't work out. So I'm really trying to supplement this whole, like, not doing jiu-jitsu as often as I'd like to type thing with other exercise until this training gets over with.
Yeah, and every day I try to do something physically demanding. You know, it's not the same. Jiu-jitsu is definitely a perishable skill. But it's just one of those things. I mean, at least you're doing something. You're staying active, you're moving, you're working in mobility, you know, because I feel like timing and conditioning are two of the first things to go when you miss an extended period of time in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%, but something I've found is, like, there's a sweet spot kind of. So, like, I've noticed this after being injured or being sick or something like that, is like, if you come back for whatever reason, you really hit some crazy shit because your body's like, "Oh, I'm back. I'm ready to go." Like, have you experienced that?
I have. I agree with you, but I haven't quite figured out the science or the math behind what the perfect number is because it kind of varies.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but I agree with you. Sometimes if I'm in a really bad plateau, sometimes missing a week, you know, just saying, hey, look, I'm just going to take a psychological break here. You know, I'm still going to work out. I'm still going to lift and run and do my thing. And I'm coming back next week. Like, you know, you're coming back next week. Sometimes that's the reset you need. And you're right. Sometimes you start hitting submissions like crazy, or you go back to some sweep or a guard that you haven't played in forever, and you're hitting it rapid fire. So I think sometimes that's like a reset.
No, I agree with that, manly. Like, it really sucks because I'd like to be training more often, and I'm trying to be real frugal about it too, which kind of sucks too. So, like, I have to rely on some, like, outside methods until I really start getting paid again. And that's really kind of the terrible part about transitioning from one job to another, is like that real, like, gap in between the two paychecks, I guess. But, like, there's still something to do, and like I said, I kind of did some taekwondo and did some forms. I guess maybe I was a little inspired because, one, I was watching, like, I finally finished this season of Cobra Kai, which I was really excited about. And then last Friday I was a guest judge. Like, I was trying to think, like, a really nice way to put it, because they were pretty much saying, like, write down notes or give them a smiley face or a frowny face or for a for a taekwondo testing. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll show up, because, you know, my two sisters are still really involved in it, and I really wanted to, like, support them because they're really, like, they love doing it, and I got invited out, so of course I want to, like, take it seriously. And they're like, hey, why don't you come back and do a little kick punch? I'm like, all right, maybe. And let's say my omoplatters are way better than, like, my spinning hook kicks these days. So
Yeah. You know what I think about every time I talk about taekwondo? Two things come up all the time.
yeah.
Number one is Best of the Best.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. That's such a good movie.
An incredible movie. James Earl Jones. Come on, man. That was such a great movie. I love the scene at the very end. I don't know why this always cracks me up, but when James Earl Jones is like, no, Tommy, no.
Yeah.
That scene is just classic. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is Best of the Best. If you haven't seen it, anybody listening, if you have not seen Best of the Best, you have to watch it. Incredible movie. And the second part, I had a buddy of mine who used to do Taekwondo. He was, I think he was like a second or third degree black belt. It was WTF Taekwondo. And I remember, we used to do these little gym wars or garage wars with a bunch of my friends in high school. We all did martial arts. A couple of us did boxing, Taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, whatever. And I just remember him hitting me with this nasty spinning hook kick, and I'm pretty sure he gave me a concussion with it. So, great guy. Unfortunately, no longer with us.
Oh,
He
damn,
died
dude.
several years ago, but great guy. Anthony Menino, I'll give him a little shout out. But he, I'm pretty sure he gave me a concussion on that. But it was, Taekwondo, people hate on it. I think it really depends on where you train, how you train. It's just like any other martial art. There's good and bad ways to train. There's good and bad gyms. Jiu-jitsu is not immune to that either. So,
No, I agree 100% with that. I could really go back and be like, for my test for my third degree in Taekwondo, I remember sitting there waiting for like the results, because they did the results right then and there, and they're like, one of the instructors came up and they're like, "Hey, you should be glad you're really good at sparring, because like the guy next to me didn't pass." So I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe it's like for this it's pretty legit, because usually
Right.
a lot of these Taekwondo schools will be like, "Oh yeah, your check cleared, Pff, you're good, man. Don't even worry about it." Like,
Well, and
you got-
that's that Americanized stuff we talked about last episode. I think that's what
Yeah.
makes a difference. Is you get these gyms that lose the integrity of their style, of the discipline and the passion and what martial arts are supposed to be rooted in, and it becomes about the money. And that's that's our fault in the West. That's not a reflection of martial arts at their core. So
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. And that I think that leads into something we were talking about, I think, was it yesterday or the day before, kind of a subject you wanted to, like, dive into for
Yeah.
the podcast. And what was that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I think this is a podcast about jiu-jitsu, and we all have a passion for this art. And unfortunately, just like anything else, sometimes we get lost in the fun, we get lost in the shuffle, and we start going too heavy into the sport jiu-jitsu and playing these fancy guards and inverted positions and stuff. And it's all well and good, and it's all in the spirit of jiu-jitsu. But I wanted to touch on kind of two facets of jiu-jitsu. Number one, the misconception that size doesn't matter because you know jiu-jitsu. I think that's a misconception that maybe some people coming in don't know much about jiu-jitsu, or people that have big egos, they get lashed onto this concept of they could just take on anybody because they have this jiu-jitsu superpower and size doesn't matter. And the other part is talking about the true magic of jiu-jitsu, which is in survivability. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about, was how size does absolutely matter in jiu-jitsu.
So that first part, so I know, like, on this podcast, we have talked a lot about between self-defense, sport jiu-jitsu, just kind of like the difference between the two, the different mindsets, how one works with the other, how one goes against the other, actually, and then, like, you bring in a size to it. So, like, I kind of want to cover that as well, because, like I said, we a long time ago, we had you on the podcast, we talked about using Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for self-defense, using it for law enforcement, using it for, like, just kind of a whole broad spectrum of scenarios. And
Right.
size does play into that quite a bit. And, it does kind of, like, I was thinking about it, too, when he said that. I was like, fuck, man. It always goes back to, like, my whole, like, white belts are just, like, some of the most rabid defenders of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And as a white belt who was, like, a super rabid defender of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I did find myself more often than not in just, like, shitty positions with just normal people.
Right. Right. Yeah, well, I mean, and it's it's something that nobody wants to talk about because it requires you to be humble, right? And accept the fact that somebody might come into the gym that is big, strong, athletic, and even though you've been doing the style longer, you've been training longer, they're going to give you a fit,
Yeah.
They're going to give you a hard time, even if you're an upper belt. You've got this darker shade belt around your waist. There's an expectation that comes with that, but that doesn't mean that you're invincible. And a really big, strong, athletic blue belt is going to give a brown belt a fit. I'm sorry. That's the reality of jiu-jitsu. That's the reality of combat, you know? But that doesn't mean that jiu-jitsu loses its value because that's the case.
Yeah, because I've had I've had to hold on for dear life with a whole bunch of just giant athletic dudes. Surprisingly, like I did one of the last roles I had in Germany was with this giant guy Chris. He's from he's a Viking pretty much. We'll just say it that. He's bigger than I am. And he what was it? We were doing guard passing and he's a white, even though he's a white belt, when he passed my guard and put me in side control for this drill, it was still one of the most like eye-opening experiences for me, because it was kind of like that whole that episode of Family Guy, if you ever saw it, when the four guys went to jail. So like Peter, Quagmire, Joe, and Cleveland went in there, and like the guy was trying to kill him, and he went into his cell and he's like, oh shit, no, I wonder what this is like. He stabs himself in the leg. He's like, oh shit, that's what I've been doing to people. That that's terrible. Like that was what I got to experience when I was like, kind of like seeing what it was like for smaller people. So yeah, even though he's a white belt and I'm a brown belt, there's still like a portion of it that still sucks, even though he's bigger than I am, like stronger than I am. Maybe not quite as agile because he's still working on his moveset, but still like it does make a difference.
It does. And I mean, I think that's what comes into that next piece, is where they kind of go back and forth, and that's the survivability piece. You look at Elio Gracie, for example, or Carlos Gracie. They're not big guys. They never were. But it's not about that. It's about their ability to survive. And technique becomes extremely important when you're both exhausted.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole thing about it, is jiu-jitsu has evolved, and I'm glad it's evolved, but people lose sight of where it came from. And where it came from was allowing a smaller, undersized person to survive that encounter. Not necessarily win in the scope of what we think of as win, but survive it, get through it, live to see another day. And there are freaks of nature out there, just big, strong, athletic people. And it's just like you said, you're going to hold on for dear life, and you're going to weather the storm. And then when they are absolutely exhausted, which doesn't take that long in the scope of a fight, when you talk about how much exertion there is in a fight, then you turn the tables and use your superior technique to get through it, or get up and disengage, if you're talking about a self-defense situation. And that's the key to it. And it's like you said, I mean, it's funny that you finally got to go against somebody bigger and kind of get a taste of your own medicine. I'm kind of glad that happened.
Okay. No, I needed it, because it is kind of an eye-opening thing as well, because something I've been very like trying to be cognizant of is that I don't want to crush my friends, like, or my training partners. So, like, if we've rolled together, I really hope that I haven't like tried to like put your sternum through the mat, like past your, past your spine. Because like, I like training with people and not breaking them. As Adam Boyd said, he was on the show at one point. He said, if you break your toys, you can't play with them anymore. So like, do what?
That's a really good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah. So that's what I think about every time I roll with somebody. I'm like, I really could just smash this dude, like smash this person into like oblivion with like a shoulder of justice or something. But they also weigh like 120 pounds less than I do. So what do I prove? Well, I prove I'm an asshole. But at the same time, like, Chris, he really like brought it back to me and to like show me that like, hey, it kind of sucks to have like a big, strong guy jump on you trying to like, submit you, like really, really trying. So it really like, it did put it into perspective. And even though there was still like a gap, like he's a white belt, I'm a brown belt, it was still pretty rough for like that initial contact.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that's where your mental game comes in. You can't get frustrated. You got to keep grinding through it, because you're gonna, if you are that far beyond them in terms of skill and understanding, eventually you're going to be able to get the upper hand if you keep your wit, you keep your composure, you keep your patience, You know,
Yeah.
you're going to be able to get the upper hand. It just might take a little bit of time. But I think that's the big issue that I see with a lot of people, and I've been there myself. And so for the listeners that don't know, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu podcast because Rob is a big guy. I am not. I am far from being a big guy. I'm 5'5", 160 right now. And so the way I apply my jiu-jitsu is going to be a lot different than the way other people apply it. And obviously I'm a brown belt, been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years. I've spent a shitload of time on the bottom in uncomfortable positions against much bigger people, getting smashed, hating life, feeling claustrophobic. So I get it, but I also, on the flip side, I want people to occasionally put that pressure on me because I need to be able to get out of there. I need to be able to experience that and learn how to fight out of it and survive it because my life and my job depend on it. So it's kind of a double-edged sword,
So you say your job really depends on it, and that was something I was actually kind of curious about, like as we're talking about it. So as a law enforcement officer, and I'm pretty sure, like you said, you're 5'5", 160. You definitely don't seem that. I'm gonna say, like, just in my mind, like, oh, Randy, he's like 6 feet tall, like 190 pounds. But like, when you deal with people you need to subdue or kind of control or help, like, de-escalate a situation, you've dealt with a lot of guys bigger than you, have you not?
I have. More often than not, that's the case, actually.
So what would you say is kind of like the key to maybe success, or maybe like, making sure you come out on top when dealing with somebody of that size?
I think initially, and I kind of had a conversation with Jim with a couple people about the similar topic just a little bit ago, ironically. So I think initially it's about checking your ego at the door and diffusing the situation at every opportunity first. Because I think, if I'm honest, I absolutely love jiu-jitsu. I teach combatives to cops. I'm on a SWAT team now. We're learning different elements of combat, obviously, in that realm. And it's something that I really have a passion for, but at the same time, real fights aren't fun. Anybody that goes out there and talks a big game about how many fights they've been into and blah, 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 blah. I'm not talking about sport either. I'm talking about the real deal. They're probably full of shit because it's not fun. It's terrifying and it's dangerous, right? And it hurts. And so the first step should always be trying to diffuse it and find a way out. Checking your ego. Who cares what this person thinks about you? And even in the scope of my job, sometimes that first piece, walking away, I can't even do because the law restricts me. I got to take this guy into custody no matter what. Yeah. He's bigger than me. And so then it's about confidence, and it's about how you portray yourself. Because you can be confident and not be a douchebag. So I think my words, my mouth, have gotten me out of more fights than my fights have saved me. Does that make sense?
No, it really does. It really, really does.
And so being smaller, what's funny is when I first got into this job, I was way smaller than I am now. I probably walked around at 140 back then. And back then in Virginia, I was a cop in Danville, Virginia back then. I got way more encounters, physical encounters, than I do now. And not much has really changed. I mean, 20 pounds isn't that big of a difference. And I'm still the same height, So
yeah.
But people just don't try me as much now, and the only thing I can chalk it up to is my ability to communicate with people and the way I carry myself and put myself out to people. Because I think when I first started out, there was kind of a chip on my shoulder. I was a new cop, and I had just started training jiu-jitsu, and, you're unsure of yourself, so you want to test it a little bit. And so you talk yourself into situations as opposed to out of it. So with bigger people, I think a lot of times if you're a smaller person and you portray yourself as confident but not a douchebag, I think that's really important to talking yourself out of a fight. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask because I'm very much about the whole talk yourself out of a fight. I've said it to my students. I was like, it's a lot cheaper to buy somebody a beer at a bar
Yeah.
than it is to get bailed out of jail. Because like you go to a bar, obviously someone's gonna have a case of I'm the toughest guy here, bumps into you, gets the whole case of like hey, fuck you, man, like I'm very much like, hey man, I didn't mean it. Like, hey, let me buy you a beer. Right?
Yeah.
Because, hey, a $5 beer is way cheaper than like $300 getting out of jail. It's the way life is. And then too, like, everybody goes home at the, like, I'm not above being like, I can't believe this guy challenged me. How dare him? Like, I can go home and be like, yeah, I walked away from a fight and some guy called me a bitch, but I'm going
but
home.
Who cares?
Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, and there was a book I read. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I think it was called Facing Violence, I believe. And it was in my studies. I developed a class called Pre-Assault Cues for law enforcement that talks about reading body language and communication skills preemptively before combat. Give yourself the upper hand, get to a dominant position before the fight even starts, basically, is what the class talks about.
Yeah.
And so in the course of developing that, I read a lot of books trying to get more material and have a deeper understanding of what I was teaching. And that Facing Violence book, it referred to that whole beginning part of a fight as the monkey dance. And I think that puts things in perspective, because a monkey dance makes you sound foolish, right? Like It makes you sound like you kind of feel stupid for that, being compared to monkeys dancing. Even though monkeys are hilarious, and monkeys dancing particularly sounds really funny. I don't want to be compared to that. But that's really what it is. I mean, everybody's posturing, everyone's trying to prove that they're something that they're not, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, why do I care? Why do I care what this douchebag thinks about me if I just completely act the role of somebody being passive? Like, hey, buddy, you know what? Hey, you're a bad dude. I don't want none. You're right. Absolutely. Hey, like you just said, let me grab you a beer. Or, you know what? My bad. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I'm just going to leave. Who cares? Who cares, really? At the end of the day, who gives a shit? I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu tomorrow and keep getting my sweat on. I'm going to go and shoot some guns tomorrow and do my thing. And I'm going to live my life and enjoy my hot girlfriend. And this guy has no say in that, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Why am I going to risk those things that I love for some asshole at the bar that had one too many drinks? I don't even know him. And so...
just to be the toughest guy at B-dubs. Like, there's no fucking payout in that.
No, and I mean, it's just, but you know what? The trouble that people train for may eventually actually find them, and that's when you apply your skill set, And then when it goes to that point, so let's talk about that part. Let's say I'm a smaller guy, I'm dealing with a bigger person, and I'm in that street type of situation. I'm going to try to diffuse it any way I can, including degrading myself to get out of it, because I don't care. I know who I am, I know what I'm capable of, and that's all that matters. Right? So I don't care what some stranger thinks. And it's not worth losing my badge over either. Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do what I can to walk away. But then if it gets to a point where you can't, then it's all about getting to a position of advantage. Because against a bigger fighter, and this goes even into just rolling at the gym too, and I'm not talking self-defense, but when you're the smaller fighter, in my perspective, and I don't know, you're going to have to talk about the bigger guy perspective because I don't know what that feels like ever. But being the smaller person, my whole goal in life when I'm rolling or fighting against somebody bigger is to not let them get on top. And if they do get on top, not to flatten me out. I don't want my shoulders flat. I want to stay with my... Right? I want to stay with underhooks stacked. I love half guard against bigger fighters. Half guard, though, like maybe with a knee shield and an underhook. That's where I want to be against a bigger fighter if I'm not on top of them on their back, which is like position A101.
That's actually a really good position to be in. Because what's funny is my Andre, who was my coach when I was in Arizona, said that bottom half guard is all about just accepting being in pain and just like you got to fight your way out of it. Like, it's a really good position, but you got to fight your way out of it. And you'll catch something and it's pretty effective. But as a big guy, one of the last things I want is to really work open guard with a small guy. And, smashing the guy's legs down and then, doing a really nasty just, knee slice pass to, Kesugatami or something like that and just, pinning them. While that works really, really well in my weight division in tournaments, it doesn't work really, really well against my friends because I like my friends. And that's the thing too, for a big guy, it kind of sucks because you can do like, you could be like one of the fastest big guys of all time. Like Buchecha is a really good example of this, and he's a extremely fast dude. But if you put Buchecha, who's a very fast, very technical guy, against like, you know, somebody will say like, you know, like maybe 80 pounds lighter than him, what's the big excuse that people will say about why Buchecha would win? Because he's bigger. He's bigger and he's stronger, man. So like, I remember very distinctly having this white belt come into class. He was like a two-stripe white belt, and we rolled a bit, and you know, sweeping him off my back, and you know, put him right into arm bars and triangles, and like just whatever I wanted, because he was a very headstrong, very just in all fairness, he was a douchebag. But I remember at one point I swept him, got on top of him, and Kimura him, and he said, "The only reason you're beating me is because you're bigger than I am." And I was a 4-stripe purple belt at this point. I was like, all right, man. The only reason I can beat you is because I'm bigger than you. So I fought off my ass the entire time, and I was a little nicer because I was like, you know, he could be a potential student here. Now, to go like a few months later than that, we had a roll-a-thon. It was 8 hours of straight rolling. You know, if you completed it, you know, you did 8 hours. You know, Dennis Hankman did a great job with this in Next Level MMA. But one guy said, like, the only reason, kind of the same thing, is like, you're so big, that's the only reason you're beating me. And I was just done with it. I was like, you know what, fuck it. I am bigger than you, so I'm going to show you what bigger guys do. So, if, I don't know if you ever experienced the Neil Weaver staple, like for, when he staples people in place for like it was like a guard it was like a retention for people trying to shrimp away from side control. So pretty much what he does is he takes his hand and he puts it on the tricep of the person and puts his elbow in their floating rib and just kind of like leans all of his weight into his elbow on the floating rib.
I've heard the term stapling. I don't know if I've experienced that specific thing.
Fuck. For whatever reason, Neil Weaver can reach like 700 pounds when he does that. I don't know how he does it, but like, so I did to that guy. I was like, you know what? I'm the big guy. You want to say I'm better than you because I'm bigger than you? Now I'm going to give you the big guy jiu-jitsu. So like, I fucking stapled him to the mat with like all my weight, and you know, just the look on his face. I was like, yeah, I'm being nice to you, man. Like, I'm really being nice to you. But the thing is, too, like, if it's tournament, yeah, I'm going to use my weight to my advantage. But, like, in a fight as well, here's the thing, too. And this is kind of, like, something I've maybe observed or, like, maybe just kind of, like, felt. But, like, big dudes who do jiu-jitsu don't really want to fight out in public either. Hopefully, right? Right. So, like, maybe it's something different. Maybe it's because of the art or whatever. But, like, usually the things you see is, like, you know, the smaller person, like you talked about, beating up the bigger person if it came down to an altercation or a law enforcement officer trying to subdue them, or, you know, just any multitude of issues where a smaller person is going to fight a larger untrained opponent and subdue them and, you know, kind of move them at their will at that point. So, like, as a big guy, anything that involves any of that, I want nothing to do with. But that's just me.
Well, it makes sense because, like you said, the same mentality carries over into street as well. Like the whole, you're a bigger guy. There's a different expectation because you're a bigger guy. Automatically, people are going to assume that you should be able to handle anybody. And so, if you get into a street fight and you demolish somebody, it's going to look worse because you're a big guy than if I do it. A smaller guy, by default. Small guy wins a fight. Oh, small guy won the fight. That's awesome. Big guy wins a fight. Oh, well, he's just bullying people. Yeah. And that's kind of how that goes. I mean, you remember the whole thing with who is that fighter? Roger Huerta.
Yeah.
You remember hearing about him fighting?
Fuck, man, that was a while back, man.
Yeah. Roger Huerta fought a Tennessee Volunteers linebacker or lineman or something in some party and knocked him out. It was like this big deal. And it's like, you're talking about, now, like I said, if that lineman would have got his hands on Roger Huerta, even with Huerta's background, he would have had a hard day, right? It would have been a hard day's work because you're talking about somebody big, strong, athletic, wrapping up somebody much smaller. But obviously in that video, Roger Huerta didn't give him the chance. He just used his strikes and superior technique to knock this guy out. But it comes back to what you're talking about. You know, I mean, the conversation wasn't, oh, well, what do you expect? Because Roger Huerta is a pro fighter. Everybody talked about how this lineman was like, you know, a 300-pound dude versus Huerta, who was like 160, you know?
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. I think big guys you guys got it rough. I mean, as a smaller fighter, everything I do against a bigger guy, I'm not even going to drop names or anything because it doesn't matter. It's insignificant. It's in the gym. It's not about wins and losses. I really was working a particular mindset against a much bigger partner that I have in my gym. And I ended up tapping him out with an Americana from mount after switching back and forth left and right on S mount, trying to go around his bench press, you know? I mean, you got to respect the bench press. If you don't respect it, he's going to push you off, right? I mean, and so I ended up getting Americana, and people were flipping out about it at the gym, making this big deal, and it made him feel bad. You know, he even said after the roll, he's like, I felt small after that. I'm like, that's not the goal. I mean, I'm just trying to do shit with what you're giving me. I want you to be the big guy because I need to work too as a small guy.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean, because it's like, you're not always going to fight people in your weight class, and
Nope.
I think that's something that people don't really maybe understand either, is like, I'll go back to another anecdote of just like shitty like people out there and whatever. So, what year is it? 2019. I know what year it is, so I'm just saying, like, all right, so what year was that? 24. So, like, 15 years ago, right? Me, my brother-in-law, and my Taekwondo instructor at the time, we were in Las Vegas for a Taekwondo Nationals tournament. And we're walking across the bridge between, was it Excalibur and New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this dude who was, like, yelling at his girlfriend, like, fucking hardcore. Just like, you know, fuck you, bitch. You know, I fucking, you know, I'll slap the fuck out of you. And my brother said something, and it was kind of like, he was like, you know, hey, why don't you chill out, kind of. And the guy looked at him and was like, I'm not going to fight you. You're not in my weight class. Like, legitimately, that's what he said.
Oh, man.
We're like, what the fuck? Like, all right, dude. That isn't how life works, man. Like, they're bad people no matter what. In I promise you, there's probably like a 500-pound dude out there waiting for me somewhere. I gotta like look over my shoulder all the time for this dude. I'm still waiting for him, but like, you know, life is not about fair matchups. Like you said, for law enforcement, for, you know, keeping yourself safe, for, you know, any multitude of these issues. Like, so having to deal with a big guy, like you said, having, like, you know, doing the Americana and making them feel small, I really feel like that's the paramount of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is that you are able to take somebody less trained than you and impose your will upon them and subdue them and submit them.
I think, but you're talking about, and I agree with you, but for the scope, and it just goes right along with what we're talking about. He was a blue belt, a slick blue belt.
Yeah.
I'm a brown belt. I'm doing this way longer, and it was hard work to get there.
Yeah.
It didn't happen within the first 2 minutes, right? It happened toward the end of the roll, and I had to work my butt off to get to that position and do that. And so that is, and exactly right. That's the paramount of jiu-jitsu. That's what jiu-jitsu is all about. Because without jiu-jitsu, if it was him and me untrained fighting, he's going to beat me 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Right? Without any training, that's what's going to happen. I'm smaller. He's bigger. He's stronger. He gets his hands on me. I'm in a big world of shit. Right? And that's the reality of it without training. So, yeah, jiu-jitsu works, and that proves that jiu-jitsu works. Now, granted, there are no strikes, right? And we were rolling. We were training within the confines of jiu-jitsu, so it was grappling and submissions and stuff. But it still shows that it works, and it comes back on the other piece, survivability, right? Being able to survive that encounter long enough to find your exit or get some help. And so if you are trained well enough in jiu-jitsu and you're a smaller person going against a bigger person that is not trained, or at least not trained to your level, you should be able to survive that encounter. And that's more important than the medals and tournaments or any of that stuff, you know? Going against somebody, because let's face it, bigger guys on the street that don't train don't know how to use leverage. They don't know how to use position. They're like fish out of water on the ground. And so you're going to be able to survive that encounter long enough to find your exit and get out of there. And I think that's more important than a lot of the other shit that we worry about.
You're 100% right on that one, mainly because even as a big dude fighting other big dudes with like when they come in the gym, they're like, hey, I want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I saw it on TV, whatever, right? So like it's still a very difficult thing to deal with, especially like if they had a little bit of athleticism, at some point in their life, they're still very difficult to deal with, like pressure wise, or movement wise, or even if they were wrestlers back in the day. But like, there's still, if you have a little bit of that competence, you're still able to gain the upper hand in that match and still like impose your will upon them.
Oh, and I think, well, wrestlers, you brought in, I mean, that's another variable.
Yeah, true.
Because we all know, I mean, God, they're nightmares when they come in the gym, wrestlers.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to submit you, right? They don't have any submissions, but they are going to make your life freaking miserable. I don't care, like if you got a really high level collegiate wrestler, even if you're an upper belt, you're like, damn it, this is going to suck.
Yeah, it's never a fun one. It's definitely like it's kind of like riding a bull, I guess. Like you just got to kind of survive it and just hope, like wait for the one mistake where like, oh, thank God. Like I felt really good, like the guys who are like super duper wrestlers, and then we had like a gi class, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like just I just wait for the perfect sweep and then like get on top and submit them, But they also bring like, that's like you said, that's another variable you got to deal with when you're dealing with wrestlers, because it's
and it's something that I think it's something people overlook in self-defense and in law enforcement, is the fact that there's a lot of people that wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that uncommon to be trained, especially depending on where you live. I mean, around here, NC State has a phenomenal wrestling program, a very successful wrestling. So you have a lot of people around here in high school that are wrestlers hoping to get into NC State's program. Or if you live in the Midwest, like Iowa, like, I mean, wrestling is a legit ground fighting system. You have to respect it. So.
No, I agree with that, and that's something a lot of people like kind of not maybe discount, but they're like, "Oh, dude, I can handle wrestlers, no problem." They've also been doing it longer than you have, so it's like we had like when I wrestled, I didn't. So the thing is, when I wrestled, I was not very good at it. Like I'm very confident in my ability to say, like, dude, I was fucking terrible at wrestling. So like it was fucking embarrassing almost, but like still you had guys who could take you down at will. And I'm very like I can say, like, if things happened like now, like, you're talking about you go into a bar, like, oh shit, there's a guy I used to wrestle with, I would say probably like 99 times out of 100 they would take me down, no problem, even though they only wrestled like in high school.
Right.
Because all they did was like shoot, pin them, get up, shoot, pin, get up. Like there's a different mentality to it in wrestling, but like being able to be comfortable on the ground is like, I'm not saying like 99 out of 100 times I'd lose, but more than likely I'd still get taken down. But they still really like that pressure, and that does add a certain issue with law enforcement, fighting, just in general, because now you have a guy who has like 4 years of grappling experience that you're having to deal with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I think control in law enforcement is the most important element of just self-defense, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, whatever system you're talking about. I think it completely changes. I don't want cops worrying about submissions. I think I've talked about that before. And so wrestlers, people that have high school wrestling background that have bad intentions toward cops are a really bad recipe because they understand takedowns and control positions, and a lot of cops don't. So, and that's been my life's work here recently, is teaching these control positions for cops, because that's what it's about. If you watch any fight on YouTube involving a police officer, multiple police officers against a suspect, there's embarrassing videos out there. The cops are even bigger. Like we're talking about, size and how important it is in combat, but you got these officers that are much bigger and stronger than the people they're arresting, and there's two of them against one suspect, and the suspect still manages to get away, right? And it's because of they don't have an understanding of positional control and dominance that you or me would take for granted. Controlling hips, controlling shoulders, right? Where to apply pressure, where not to. That whole stapling concept. Things like that cops just don't have. That any of the listeners, if they do jiu-jitsu, just completely take for granted. But that's the reality of it, man. So yeah, wrestling is legit. I mean, I think a police department could honestly base their defensive tactics off of wrestling and boxing and be okay with it. Or at least much better off than what most departments teach if they do it with enough frequency.
I was going to say, yeah, just anything in general is better than not doing it at all.
Yeah, which a lot of agencies don't. Yeah.
No. I've heard that as well. Like, yeah, you're good. Just fucking go out there and do your thing. No problem.
Yeah, just tase them. It's like, come on, man. The taser sucks, but damn.
Yeah.
Well, and so real quick, man, I it's a little off topic, but I wanted to tell you, not this week, but next week, my department is sending me to Gracie Survival Tactics. With,
really?
Hero and Gracie. Yeah. So if you've watched their YouTube channel, I mean, they're one of those. They're those guys you love or you hate. I respect 90% of what they do. There's always that element of misunderstanding them not being in the career, but I feel like their intentions are really good. And so, yeah, it's a week-long course. It's just a level 1 instructor certification. But I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to seeing how they apply their jiu-jitsu in that realm and getting to meet them. I think it's going to be really cool. So,
I was going to say, like, based on the people I've met who've trained with Gracie University or, like, who teach their curriculum, like, they're pretty solid, man. So, like, it's going to be a really good experience to, like, get out there and kind of see what they have to do for, like, law enforcement and things like that. So, it's legit, man. That's pretty badass.
I'm hoping. I don't know how it's going to go. I'm sure they got a busy schedule. I'm going to get demolished, there's no question, but I'd like to get a couple rounds in with the two of them, man, just to kind of, just to get in there and flow with them a little bit, because I think that'd be a really cool experience.
What's the worst that can happen?
Just get submitted a million times.
There you go, man. Like, dude, that's with, like, all jiu-jitsu classes. What's the worst that can happen? You get submitted. Oh, well, fucking keep going.
It can't be any worse than what I experienced when I go and roll with Samuel Braga in Knoxville. He demolishes me every single time.
I can only imagine. Man.
That's a small guy, too. That fits right in the topic, man. Samuel Braga is smaller than me. It's amazing.
Perfect. All right, man. Well, that was a really good episode. So before we head out, is there anything you'd like to pass on to our listeners outside of talking about going to Gracie University and seeing these guys and hopefully, getting a few rolls in with them?
No, I think just stay, keep at it, keep working hard, keep training. Like I always say, hit us up on Facebook or whatever social media account you watch us on and let us know what you want to hear about and talk about. We're open to anything. I feel like me and Rob can bullshit about just about any topic on the planet, so challenge us. We're open to it. We're good for it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah, I agree. Like, we're still, like, going through these topics, and, it's kind of like a ping-pong back and forth kind of see what we're talking about. And, I really have a good time talking about whatever topic we can hit in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and, we'll probably get a little more controversial as the podcast goes on as we normally do. But we really do appreciate you guys listening, and don't forget to check us out at bjjshow.com. Find some of the old episodes that we did, and don't forget to check out our sponsors, Strap and Roll Soap Company, Tape Armor, and Rolls Gear. And like I said, you can find all of our old episodes at bjjshow.com. I'm Rob.
I'm Randy.
And we'll catch you guys next time.